does his job, then gives up his dictatorship to go back to his farm and actually plow the fields himself. Right? He's in the fields, not just his slaves, but he's in the fields as well. And so that is gone. That idea of civic duty is gone. It's the way of the dinosaur at this time, and Rome suffers greatly for it. People are stuffing their own pockets full of money instead of, paying their taxes, trying to get away with things, so to speak. Right? And so there's also a lack of will to join the military. The military used to be seen as something reserved for the good people of Rome, the landowning citizens of Rome, and now it's full of the riffraff and Germanic tribal people, and so people are like, it's not an honorable thing to do anymore, we're going to avoid it. And on that same topic, when we get down to Christianity, and I'll try to go quicker here, people aren't wanting to join the military because of Christianity as well, because once it takes hold in Rome, and it takes a while to, but once it takes hold in Rome, one of the core tenets of Christianity is thou shalt not kill, right? And so joining the military to go kill people, they're going to have a problem with that. And so you have a lack of wanting to join the military because Christianity is a religion that talks about peace and forgiveness, not of murder and killing. And remember, that's how Rome became powerful, from its murdering and killing. So when people stop doing that, it's one of the reasons why Rome is not going to be as powerful as it used to be. Corrupt generals and government officials, kind of like the ineffective rulers here, they were more in it for themselves than they were for the betterment of Rome. Generals had control of their legions. We talked about how Marius, he had work on Marius and how he changes the Roman military, and anybody can join it. And you would pay your soldiers their salaries. And so, the government wouldn't pay their salaries, you would pay their salaries. And so you had people becoming more loyal to the generals than to their country. And so, these generals knew that. They had their own personal desires. Some of them wanted to be emperor. Well, if you get me to be emperor, I will make sure that I pay you more money. And, of course, the soldiers, many of them, don't really care about Rome anymore. Yeah, great, more money, sounds good to me. Let's go kill that guy and we'll put you in charge, right? And that, again, and that's what you see going on in only 75 years, 20 different emperors, because all of them are making promises, many of them to their soldiers, and again, the soldiers are used as kind of a tool to get what these leaders wanted, these generals wanted. Government officials as well were taking bribes. They were in it for themselves, no longer for the glory of Rome. So you have a lot of corruption going on here, guys. And the people are just looking at all this like, I don't care anymore, right? The common people. Inflation becomes rampant in Rome. Again, the Roman government doesn't have a lot of money, and so it has to take out loans, but it can't repay those loans. And so it comes up with a strategy, which is a terrible one. A lot of people, you guys ask, well, how come we can't just print more money? Because when you print more money, it becomes less valuable as you have more of it out there, right? That's called inflation, right? And so that's what happens in ancient Rome as well. But they weren't printing money because they didn't have paper money. So how were they devaluing their currency? It used to be, solid silver and solid gold. So instead of making it solid gold, they would say, all right, this coin's going to have 30% gold in it. The rest of it's going to be nickel or copper or something that's less valuable. Well, the people of Rome weren't stupid, and they adjusted their prices to meet the change in metal, the metal count. So it became less pure, and so they would just charge more money to get the same amount as they had before, which is kind of what inflation would do in this country, right? Yeah, it's not going to stay the same price. A home is adjusted to inflation. That's why it's a good investment, and things like this. So same concept, just happened in the ancient world, right? So, for example, like a loaf of bread used to cost you about, I think it was 10 to 20 drachma. By the time it's at its worst, it's like 10,000 drachma for a loaf of bread, just to give you an idea. So people were starting to barter instead of rely on currency. All right, just finish this off quickly here. Non-Roman soldiers, many of them were conscripted from Germanic groups. They had no loyalty to Rome whatsoever. They were only in it for the money. They were only in it for the benefits. And so when you had some leader saying, let's go attack Rome, and put me in power as emperor or whatnot, of course they were going to be in favor for it because they were Germanic, they weren't Roman, and so they were just taking the money and running with it, so to speak. I already mentioned before about Christianity, right? The values of a traditional Roman are not the same values of a Christian, right? A Christian is wanting to forgive your neighbor and to not kill and to not watch people murder each other in the Colosseum for entertainment. And so you go from a society that's very warlike. I mean, they became powerful because they were warlike, because they were always conquering other groups of people. And they put a lot of respect and prestige into those who were fighting, right? And now it's kind of the opposite. People who were killing indiscriminately are now looked at unfavorably, and you're following a different set of moral code. It's not the same moral code as the ancient Romans. And so many historians would say that Christianity was one factor that also led in the weakening of Rome, because its mentality had shifted. Okay, and a splitting up of the empire, which I have over here in a moment. The splitting of the empire happened in 395 AD, and it was on Emperor Theodosius' deathbed. After he died, he said he wanted the empire split into two parts because he had seen that it was just too difficult to manage. And so at first, this is going to be not a bad thing. It works pretty well. It's easier to manage, but there are going to be some problems to it as well. One of the biggest problems is, and we'll go over here now, one of the biggest problems is that after Rome splits, once Theodosius dies on his deathbed, right, it splits into two parts in 395, you have two empires emerge. The original Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire. The new one is going to be the Eastern Roman Empire. It's also known as the Byzantine Empire. It's the same thing, it's just called something different. All right, and the idea was that you both have common history, you both have common elements from your past, you were united, you were supposed to stay very strong and close with one another, and to essentially rule yourself independently, so it's easier to manage your empire because it's smaller, but then work cooperatively with everything else. And in the beginning, that was happening, but it doesn't take long for the Byzantine Empire to start to put its own personal interests before the Western Roman Empire. And the Western Roman Empire cannot exist without the help of the Byzantine Empire. And so you see, no longer the resources that are needed. There's not enough men, there's not enough money. And the Byzantine Empire is saying, well, we've got problems too. We have to take care of ourselves. We can't just keep giving things away to you because we're also being attacked by Germanic tribes. And so the Western Roman Empire is left to kind of deal with its own problems with drastically less resources. Because if you look at the map, a lot of, especially the bread-producing areas of Rome, are going to be in this area, especially Egypt and Mesopotamia, right? And so there's not enough food going in. There's not enough money. You have the city of Alexandria, for example, Constantinople, all right, as well as several other very important cities that are producing lots of money for Rome. They're not getting that tax money anymore. And so they're left with less. And they're supposed to deal with the biggest problems they've ever had in their existence, and they just can't do it. They can't do it. And so they start to lose land drastically in all areas, and it's just one event after another of it falling. You have Germanic groups that eventually will attack and take over the city of Rome. They sack it. They destroy things. They pillage, and then they leave. And then a couple years later, another group of Germanic barbarians come in. They do the same exact thing. All right, and so it happens repeatedly over and over again until eventually Rome can't recover. And the last event of the Western Roman Empire in history is in 476 AD, which is the date of the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And this guy here, Odoacer, he's going to take over Rome. And instead of just simply going in the city and sacking it, and taking things and leaving, he decides to stay and rule it. And there will never be another Roman emperor ever again. It will always go to somebody else. So historians date the Western Roman Empire, its decline and its death, in the year 476. And interestingly enough, the Roman Empire begins with a Romulus. And the last emperor, right, His name is Romulus Augustulus, right? So you have two Romuluses, one that starts and one that finishes it. So that's kind of ironic, so to speak, right? Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire, however, continues to exist for close to 1,000 years later. So it's not the end of Rome, it's the end of the original Rome. It's the end of the Western Roman Empire. But the Eastern Roman Empire, which we're going to talk about next, that continues on for about another 1,000 years. All right, and so real quickly again, this is just a short snippet of what caused Rome to fall. We could go into these and spend a lot more time than that, but as far as an overview, that's kind of what happens. Many people would look at some of these and say, hey, changing names, changing ideas, things are happening the same to a degree, right? So we can learn from our mistakes, we can learn from our past, right? And that's what makes history important. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and I will see you for the next one. Enjoy, stay healthy, and stay safe. Bye.